Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 1, Episode 8, The Truth is Out There and It Hurts. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary of exactly what happens within this episode. A warlock from the future comes to kill the creators of a vaccine against evil, while Prue casts a truth spell on all the sisters so that she can see Andy's reaction to her being a witch risk-free. Once we've rewatched the episode, I then rank the episode on two separate lists. One is mostly objective, which is absent emotion, and then the other one is a personal ranking list, which is entirely my opinion and how I felt watching the episode. All right, so as always, we start with our mostly objective rank values, which for this episode, we'll start with the positives. So the first positive is that we have a main relationship development, which is, of course, the confirmation that Phoebe's out of the running. She was only interested in Leo because Piper was and didn't have any feelings of her own. And now that that's out in the open, obviously, she won't be interfering with them anymore, which is great. And I'm so glad they didn't drag that out because honestly, wasn't really into the whole rivalry between siblings over a guy thing. Didn't really, as an audience member. We then, of course, get the confirmation that the feelings between Piper and Leo are mutual. During the truth spell, we have Piper asking Leo how he feels about women who make the first move, him saying that he's waiting for it to happen. Then she kisses him. And then he asks about guys making the second move. She says she loves him, and then he kisses her again a second time. Of course, this does end up being a bit of a false starter as the truth spell wears off, and Leo, not being one of the sisters, does in fact forget that this happened. Though we do see that he has a sense of something because he does come up to Piper at the end of the episode saying that he thinks he might have done something he should apologize for, but she of course assures him that he did not, and then invites him to have a drink with her, which he does accept. Now, one thing I have always kind of wondered about is we know from future, being rewatchers, we know the future, spoilers, obviously, their romance is considered to be somewhat forbidden. Witches and whitelighters aren't supposed to be together. At this point, she doesn't know he's a whitelighter, but that obviously comes out in the future. Again, I warned, spoilers. I do wonder if the truth spell had not been in effect and Piper had asked that question, whether or not Leo would have lied about his own feelings because he knows that it's forbidden even if she doesn't. I mean, it's a bit of a non-issue because obviously the truth spell was in effect at this time, so now she knows the truth that he is also interested in her, mutual feelings and all. But I have always been curious, and I wonder if anyone's ever written a fan fiction about it. I really should go look. But in the event that there was no truth spell there, I wonder how that would have changed things. Would Leo have lied because of the forbidden nature, or would he have still said yes and still taken on the burden of that relationship and its forbiddenness and fought for it, given how new their relationship is at this point? So curious. I'll never have an answer, but I do wonder. Second, anyways, that's worth, 4 points. The next one, of course, also this one's worth 3 points, is the impactful, memorable moment line, etc. Basically, that's the Piper and Leo first kiss. First kisses are always important, and especially in a drama series where relationships are important, firsts of things tend to be very notable in the series. So obviously I'm going to note that their first kiss, even if it was a false start, is impactful to the series, to the characters, to me as an audience member, and so that is worth 3 points. We then move on to the world building, which is worth 4 points. And that is, of course, that time travel we have learned now is possible. We do see time travel occurring in future episodes as well, but this is the first time in the series where it is noted that it can happen and confirmed to have happened. With the warlock, the big bad of the episode, having come from the future to kill Tanya's baby, who is the one who puts the pieces together to create the vaccine. We also learned that it is a boy and that she is pregnant because she doesn't know that. And so with that, that brings us to 11 out of 10. However, there are negatives to this episode. The first negative, of course, is that there is a main relationship regression or breakup, which is where the breakup with Andy becomes official. In the last episode, it was implied, but more so in the like they were thinking about breaking up. They weren't sure if they wanted to keep, like Andy wasn't sure if he wanted to keep seeing her or not, that he was kind of at his wit's end, but he didn't officially say, we are done, we're breaking up, we're not seeing each other again. In this episode with the truth spell, Prue reaches out, tries to tell him the truth that he's been asking her to tell him. However, due to his reaction to it, which I'll speak more on the personal ranking because I think it's more applicable there, the breakup is official. Obviously, we've got the crying going on, so it's real this time, and that is why it is a -3 points. And then, of course, we have worth a -4 points, a continuity error. When Prue reveals that she is a witch, Andy kind of asks her some additional questions about it. She answers them. One of the questions he does ask her is, if they were to be together and they had children together, would they be magical as well? And she answers, if they're girls, yes. Obviously, we know from the future, we know about Wyatt, we know about Chris, we even know about, well, we'll talk more about it in the episode, but Prue even helps um, a boy who is a witch in a future episode as well. We know that males are able to be witches. We also know that Paige at one point also dates a male witch, so we know male witches exist. We know that they also can be born to the Hallowell line, that the magic is not gender specific. However, understandably, at this point, they haven't encountered a male witch yet, so it's understandable why they would maybe think that. However, it is also established in the first episode that warlocks are like witches who like were born witches who decided to take the path of evil, and that's how they became a warlock, killing good witches and stealing their powers. Jeremy was the first warlock that they met. This, of course, because he's a warlock, implies that he was born a witch, which then also implies that male witches could exist, and that was at the first episode. So at the same time, I think it's just a continuity error, something that they retcon later, but at least to me, we know that men can be witches. It's implied with Jeremy's existence that, and the existence of warlocks that are male in existence implies males can be witches. So it is kind of understandable also in their line, maybe she has a false impression because their ancestors have all been women, like it's that have been the magical ones. So maybe that's just what she's assuming. Like I said, I'm giving fair play and everything, like fair consideration. But ultimately, we know it's not true. That's an error. That's -4 points. And that brings us to a total for this episode of 4 points out of 10 on the mostly objective ranking. So now that we have our mostly objective ranking for this episode, I'll remind you of the season 1 episode rankings so far. On the mostly objective ranking, in first place, we have Something Wicked This Way Comes, I've Got You Under My Skin, Dead Man Dating, Dream Sorcerer, Thank You for Not Morphing. This episode falls into 6th with The Truth Is Out There and It Hurts. 7th was The Wedding from Hell, and in last place is The Fourth Sister. So the episode this time started with the sisters well, basically the warlock from the future kills someone in a parking garage. The sisters are waiting in line to go to a movie. Phoebe gets a premonition of Tanya being attacked. They go to the parking garage following the police cars, and they find one of the other victims. We then also find out that there's a lab technician who is also killed before the warlock from the future finds Tanya his true target. And it had me questioning. Again, we'll never get a true answer because it's not really shown within the series, but I do wonder, why was Tanya the one that she saw? Like, is Phoebe's premonitions only showing those attacks that she is capable of stopping? And it was implied then that the lab technician and the guy in the underground parking lot were not able to be saved, and therefore that's why she did not see their deaths but saw Tanya's instead, which was taking place further into the future. It doesn't really confirm it, but it does make you wonder about exactly how her powers work and if that may be the case. And then, of course, we also get within the episode the premonition when Tanya's asking about the truth, like, because under the truth spell, Tanya asks why the warlock would be after her. And when Phoebe leans forward to answer and puts her hand on Tanya, she gets a second premonition, which shows that Tanya is expecting, though, of course, Tanya doesn't know this. I do find it, maybe this goes back to the objective with the continuity error, but she was asked a question, she touched Tanya, got a premonition, and she never actually had to answer the question to Tanya, even though at that time the truth spell was still in effect. So either the premonition disrupted that magic, or that was an oversight of the creators, like the script writers. But I just realized that, so I'm going to point that out. Probably counts towards that continuity error from the objective list. And of course, the warlock, once Tanya escapes, starts targeting Prue instead, ultimately being defeated when Phoebe puts the pieces together, realizes that he'd probably be after Prue, and then sends Piper. Piper freezes him. They fight over a crowbar, trying to argue over who should, kill him. And then when he unfreezes and turns around, they both panic and jointly stick the crowbar in his eyes. So ends that saga with the warlock and Tanya. Most of this episode's focus, though, was on the truth spell and its consequences. Obviously, we see the book repeatedly opening to the truth spell until eventually Prue takes the hint. Here's where I have another questions that never get answered, but I still want to express those questions. The truth spell is considered to be personal gain. That is what Phoebe says is the reason that they are able to remember the consequences of all of the questions that they asked and remember everything when everybody else forgets, because that is the consequence to having used the spell for personal gain to learn the truth. Yet I wonder, why is this book encouraging Prue to break the rules when it is supposed to be their guiding, wisdom encased book? Like, this book is supposed to have all of the knowledge that they need to be witches, so on and so forth. And it's purposefully opening on multiple occasions to the truth spell, encouraging Prue to use it. Which, again, why is it encouraging her to break the rules and suffer the consequences of personal gain? Admittedly, though, the personal gain consequences in this case were relatively minor. It was just a matter of having to live with the answers to questions that you asked, and she wanted those answers anyways, so but also bit sus that the book is encouraging them to break the rules. It's supposed to be their ally. Moving on. Obviously, Prue takes the hint. She casts the spell. And then when we follow her journey, she basically uses the spell to confess to Andy, answer Andy's questions. Andy goes off to think and ponder. And then just before the spell ends, she goes to him and asks him for a definite response. And his response is, if he has to answer right at that moment, then he cannot accept it. To be fair, though, based on the phone call that she has with him to set up the time, he was doing an interview around 5 and then swinging over later after that was finished. So he probably was there, what, 5:30, 6 o'clock, depending on how long his interview went. She drops this bomb on him, and then before 8 o'clock at night, so like less than 3 hours later, she's like, give me an answer on whether you can accept this. I mean, that's a huge thing. That's very impactful to their future. That's something that, it would take time to process, to understand, to go through the pros and cons list to truly think about it. And obviously, he's just returning home when she arrives at 8 o'clock. So he's obviously had other things he had to do as well. So he wasn't sitting there the entire time thinking solely on this issue, not maybe realizing that he had a time crunch. So while he says at that moment he can't, there is always the possibility that, had he been given the appropriate amount of time to come to terms, to do the pros and cons list, to truly think about how important Prue is to him versus how much this impacts his life and his future and so on and so forth, that he may have had a different answer. And it is a little bit unfortunate that he isn't given the opportunity to have that full time to process and give an answer that he would feel is like that he can give like a true answer. And even when he's like answering the question under the truth spell, it's if I have to answer right now, implying, of course, that had he had time to process, there could have been a different answer, one that she would have been happier with. But obviously, this ends to their breakup. Another way in which Prue unintentionally uses the truth spell is with Hannah. Hannah comes in, tries to steal her favorite sandwich that Tanya, the sandwich girl, was saving for her. And when she asks why she's taking that one when she doesn't even like turkey, Hannah reveals, of course, that she's only taking it because she doesn't want Prue to have it. Prue asks why she would do something like that, and Hannah replies that it's her mission in life to destroy her. And Rex, of course, comes in to save Hannah, takes her aside, and once again, we are kind of hinted at that they aren't human. She uses her powers to light his cigar. Obviously, she says her mission in life is to destroy Prue, so that also is impactful, giving a hint that they are not on the good side, that there's something off about them. It's very minor, more hinted at than anything, but we do see it. And then, of course, later Hannah comes to apologize to try to smooth things over after being scolded by Rex for almost outing them. And then Prue says that she doesn't really mean her apology, and Hannah, of course, says of course she doesn't before making a quick exit. Prue also uses the truth spell to get the information from the warlock about the fact that he's from the future, that he was sent specifically for Tanya's child, who's going to create a vaccine, and is the most important puzzle piece because they are the one who puts all of the pieces together. Also revealing, of course, that it is a boy because he uses the word he. We then, so that's how Prue handles it in this episode. On the side of Phoebe, she uses it to her advantage in trying to find Tanya for her premonition. And of course, in speaking with Tanya after, but she goes to the police station. She speaks with Andy. She doesn't give him a chance to ask her questions so she can avoid answering, but instead asks Andy all of the questions to get all the information, and that's how she's able to later put the pieces together with Tanya because she has the vision about the baby, which shouldn't exist, which nobody knows exists, a metal that shouldn't exist, and a warlock the book says doesn't exist, being the clue she uses to say he's probably from the future. And then we have Piper, and Piper basically uses the truth spell to her advantage in that she uses it to her personal life to kind of give her courage. She stands up to her boss, who has been overworking her, finding out that he's basically been taking advantage of her on purpose because he knows she wouldn't say anything. She quits. Later, he does forget that, but then because she already knows basically how he feels about it and that he does have the means to hire the people needed, when he has forgotten what happened with the spell, she then does have the courage again to confront him and basically make her life a little bit easier by making sure that he's hiring the people that he needs to hire, or else she will quit. And it helps that she gets to keep her job and probably whatever benefits come with the job, which, given that they are living in a house that probably has pretty big property taxes. Probably her job is needed. I mean, Prue makes a lot too, but Phoebe, let's not forget, is still unemployed at this point. And then, of course, her personal life, courage with Leo, asking him how he feels about women making the first move. I covered this part in the objective, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but obviously she uses that to kiss him, and then when he forgets, asks him out, already knowing that he does reciprocate her feelings and having then the courage to be able to do that as well. So she uses it kind of like as a way to gain courage. And then I also like, just as a general note, how it kind of highlights also when the spell is first cast, kind of like those little white lies people tell in their daily lives, like Prue's coffee. She always wants it to be leaded, and Piper would lie to her that it was, but then under the truth spell basically says it's ridiculous to make two cups of coffee when you're the only one who drinks diesel, so it's never actually been the coffee that Prue thought it was. Piper has a mark on her face, a pimple, and Phoebe at first tells her, "Oh, no one can see it," being the nice white lie to make somebody feel better. And then once the truth spell kicks in, it's huge. You've got a mountain on your face. Of course, we as the audience see nothing. And then, of course, there's the whole Piper's lying about how she does stand up to her boss, or she has said something to the boss. And then once the spell kicks in, she hasn't done it. She chickened out, so on and so forth. So it just kind of highlights all those little things that people kind of say to make people feel better, but actually are lies. But those don't really have a lot of impact. They're more there for more of a comedic effect, I would think. And so anyways, having said all that, having expressed my opinions and my views on this episode, the ranking I gave it overall was an 8 out of 10. And that brings our personal ranking so far to, in first place, as the favorite, Dead Man Dating. However, this one is a close second, and I put The Truth Is Out There and It Hurts in second place. Then we had Something Wicked This Way Comes, Dream Sorcerer, Thank You for Not Morphing, I've Got You Under My Skin, The Wedding from Hell, and in perpetual last place, we have The Fourth Sister. Now we come to our final segment, which is the series ranking. This is where we are going to rank the 8 seasons against each other that are within this series, and we're going to do that by scoring each season and then finding its percentage after each episode is scored. And based on that percentage, we'll figure out which seasons are better versus which ones are less great, though all the seasons are amazing. Well, season 8 is questionable to me personally. Anyways, the point is, there's 22 episodes in this first season. That means a maximum score of 220. Now that we've added our objective score of 4, we now have 46 out of 220. And on the personal side, we've now added 8, which brings the personal ranking also up to 46 out of 220. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 1, Episode 8, The Truth Is Out There and It Hurts. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.